Petra and Lukáš joined me for the panel discussion today. Please feel free to send us the questions, but I have to start by asking, is there something that has changed with new generations coming to the workplace? Is the talk about mental health different nowadays? And I will start with you, Petra.
That's a great question, and the answer is yes, of course. It already started with the famous millennials, even though they are not the youngest generation any longer. And I think the main difference is that these are generations of people who are not afraid of asking for what they think they deserve, versus the previous generations, including me being one of those, being brought up to just work hard and hustle and hope that someone will notice us and be just endlessly grateful for anything on top of the basics. The younger generations, they just ask for things. They're vocal about their demands and needs. And in my opinion, it's a good thing.
So often, Lukáš, I will come to you in a minute. So often I talk to the managers and they tell me this exactly. They're very vocal about their mental health. They're not worried about calling in a sick day because they don't feel that they're like mentally stable that day. But at the same time, you think, how could the managers from older generations deal with that? Because so often they're struggling with understanding that, with the openness, with the vulnerability that's coming in their way.
Naturally, this is an issue. It's a struggle, and it requires a lot of patience from managers and the will to invest in their younger team members. They simply need to act again as mentors, and also educate the younger team members on what is an appropriate way to ask for things. Because I think the issue is not the team members asking for something or being vocal about their needs. Very often the issue is just the communication style. And that's a problem as old as humanity, I think. The communication style and different perception expectations between the older generation and the younger generation. So there is increased demand on the manager's side to be patient and to act as mentor. But what I definitely wouldn't recommend is ignoring those asks or requests or acting as if the request itself was inappropriate. Mm-hmm. Because it's actually, as a manager, you're being given a gift because you don't have to search and guess what the issue may be. The person actually is telling you.
Mm-hmm. I love it that you're saying it, because when I was looking into some data in Gen Z and Gen Y, they are obsessed with feedback and they are not afraid giving you feedback, but they're not afraid of receiving feedback. So I think that can be a really fast two-way communication, how to get everybody better. So love it. Yeah. Lukáši, in your research, have you seen any difference between younger generations and older generations in the workplace and how they approach the therapy?
We did not ask, but I can tell you my personal experience as a leader. I really think that what Petra said is true. What I see more is that younger people are more willing to adapt new benefits and adapt technological benefits like mood tracking or online psychotherapy. So they think and they talk about their feelings and they are more willing to solve them through new benefit system from my point of view.
Mm-hmm. When you talked about the companies who are actually adapting Hedepy, you mentioned there are companies where 40% of the employees are taking the therapy sessions. Mm-hmm. What kind of companies are they? Those mm-hmm. where the employees are very active?
I think it has like two parts. The first one, companies who are more innovative, like product companies who were startups and now they are global. They have headquarters in western part of the world and it's pretty normal there to visit psychotherapy. The second part are companies where you have a lots of stress, like accounting or lawyers, marketing agencies, where you have to handle lots of problems with people because this is stressful. Talking with people and solving the problems, adapt, is stressful. This is where people are willing to visit psychotherapy online.
Mm-hmm. Petra, you take care of well-being in Red Hat. That's obviously not therapy only. Could you talk more about what are the general well-being strategies in companies?
Yeah, so that's the $1 million question. And we could extend our discussion for 2 days and still wouldn't be done with it. But exactly as you say, Pavlína, it is a very complex task, and you have to have a holistic approach if you want to tackle well-being in your organization, which means it's important to take into consideration not just all kinds of well-being, because there is not just one well-being. You have mental/emotional, you have physical, you have financial, you have social, and the theories differ. So someone will give you 5, someone will give you 8. But generally, there are all sorts of well-being. But also you need to take into consideration the demographics of your workforce, of your population, because well-being means different things for people at different stages of their lives. And this is something where I think companies sometimes fail. There is, what I've seen in the past years as a trend, is a lot of focus on parents, on young parents, new parents, which is fantastic. I'm all for supporting families. What about those who are past their productive life in terms of producing babies? Here we are. What about those? And I will say some words that we're not used to hearing in a business environment. But what about women experiencing menopause? Mm-hmm. That is a major event in life, which indeed is influencing you at work. And we could name a long list of other life stages that require attention, where you as an employer can do some good and can differentiate yourself from the vast amount of opportunities that are out there. So also generally we all know that at least in Western civilization, overall we're aging. And that applies to work, to businesses too. We at Red Hat, we have employees who have been with Red Hat for 20, 25 years. These people deserve to be looked after, and parental leave is not going to do it. So I'm not giving a very specific answer because it's impossible within the time frame, but I would say the key word here is holistic and attentive to different life stages. That's what you need to focus on when building your well-being strategy.
I love it so much, the fact that you actually, and again, coming to my marketing background, you have different target groups and you have different messaging towards them, you have different benefits. So it's not one meal voucher fits all, but it's basically like kind of drafting it for every person.
Hopefully not for every person, but definitely you really should cover all groups one way or another. At least be aware of their needs and make sure that the company has a solution for them.
Do you employ different strategies when it comes to monitoring their needs, when it comes to different target groups?
There are always the big listening strategies, as in surveys, which are very important for any company. It really gives you a sense of the shape of the organization. But also individuals, I have to say, we have about over 20,000 employees today, and recently we conducted this all-embracing company survey. Over 17,000 people actually gave written open text feedback. See, not just ticking boxes, but actually expressing something in written, taking that action. And we had a team, I'm part of the team, reading every single one of them. Wow. So we don't miss anything. But I would anyway go back to managers. There's absolutely no way a company, from global perspective, is able to track the needs and the situation of every single employee. That is the manager's job. And if the manager is missing on these, doesn't have that level of trust with their team members, they're simply not doing a good job.
I feel there's a red thread kind of running through our conversation, and that is like people are willing to give you feedback. People are willing to share with you their needs. You just need to listen. And so often companies choose to ignore that.
One of the key trainings, we have a set of trainings that are mandatory for every new manager at Red Hat, whether they were promoted to manager or hired as managers. It's called M-Series. And that is a lineup of trainings that you are expected to go through as a new manager at Red Hat. One of the key ones that I would recommend to every company to adopt is giving and receiving feedback. To me, that's just the basics, but not only for managers. We have one that is giving and receiving feedback for managers and one that is giving and receiving feedback for associates, which is employees at Red Hat. So it is important to learn to give and receive feedback in a constructive way.
Thank you. Lukáši, you talk a lot with HR managers, and I think you have a really good insight what they are adopting as well-being strategies in their companies, apart from only introducing psychotherapy. What do you see as the biggest trends?
I think that Petra actually said it. It's a freedom. It's a freedom and how to work with the time of the employees, because nowadays everybody would like to be flexible and decide what they can do, what they can't do. Simply give them more responsibility and freedom. Companies starting to give them 4 days working week or 3 days working week actually, and the next 2 days, like in Google, you can work on your project or you can educate yourself. I think this is a big part of well-being, to give people time and let them decide what they want to do in your company. Maybe they will create something great for you, or maybe they will work on themselves.
Mm-hmm. I think Petra addressed this in last one when she said when people are burnt out, they are not investing in themselves, they are not growing, they are not educating themselves. So, and this is exactly what you're pointing in this question, in this answer.
Yes, I think the time, giving people time to take care of themselves is one of the important learning from this discussion. The second thing is what maybe Petra said as well, I'm addressing you always, is to teach leaders and other people in the company how to adapt this topic and how to talk with others about psychotherapy. Because of HR, it's sometimes a department which focuses to many different target groups, but the leader actually really knows how people feel or should know. So we have to teach leaders how to offer their people in a good way. It's really hard actually, psychotherapy or help, and to recognize when it's needed and when it's not, because as you said, juniors or other people, they express themselves, emotional, lots of things, but it doesn't mean that they need psychotherapy always. So we have to teach them ourselves how to do it in a good way.
In my opinion, everybody needs psychotherapy, but I think I'm saying it because I've been to Tinder, and that kind of gets us there. But anyway.
That's a different story.
Yeah, that's the relationships. You both talk a lot about designing the space in your workday for the therapy. And it's a question for both of you. What strategies do you see as good ones in the companies? Because we talk about the importance of creating it, but are there any we have Fridays off, or we have 20% of the time you can invest in well-being, or are there any actual steps you've seen?
So again, if I may,
yes.
there would be a list. I personally have no meetings Friday in my calendar. Works miracles. No one dares to schedule across that. So it's worth trying if your job allows it. But generally speaking, one thing that we did back then at Google, and that I think was a real game changer while being the simplest of things, and it was a back then response to people actually starting to talk about feeling burned out across the board. Google operates based on OKRs, objectives and key results, that typically are related to your job, to performing your job. You set up your objectives, you set up the key results that you commit to delivering. To battle potential burnout and lack of energy, it was introduced to add to your OKRs something called one little thing or one small thing. And it was everybody's responsibility to name what it is that they would like to include in their work, in their day, that will help them regain that energy, recharge and feel inspired and energetic again. And it could be a very individual thing. Then you would discuss this proposal with your manager, and if it was feasible within your team and your work line, you were sort of not allowed, you were held responsible for actually doing it. So people would, for example, say, I need every Friday to finish at 3 to be able to accompany my child to ballet. Or someone would say, once a month I need Friday off to take my painting class. Very, very different things, but it was always one little thing that was allowing the person to just have some freedom to do something that fulfills them. And then next year around, the same survey, and we jumped up double digits when it came to burnout and feeling uninspired. So this is a small tip that I can offer companies to try. And again, people will not misuse it. I think we really need to shift our mindset as companies, as designers of organizations, to trusting first. And only if your trust is failed, then of course make some steps. But majority of your employees will not misuse this generous offering.
I love that you're saying it, because whenever I tell somebody that my employees have unlimited holidays or home office anytime or anything, they're like, how do you control them? How do you check on them? It's kind of like, because I chose them, because they're great people, because, yeah, exactly. Lukáši.
I think in the companies, and we are living that in Hedepy, we have to focus on individuality of each employee. So let people design their working day. Let people design how they are going to do the goals, what they are going to do for that. We are running OKRs in Hedepy, so I can really understand how it helps us to give them like a key result and let them how they are going to achieve it. And really what helps us is like full remote. I know that it's not applicable to each of the company, especially to huge companies. But if we give people a chance to decide if they want to work at a space, at the island in New York or in Prague, but just finish their job, it will really help them to take care of their babies, their lives, go to the doctor, and feel less stress, because they know how to do it. We choose them, as you said. So I think more individuality, it's great.
I'm glad you're mentioning this, Lukáš, because this has been on my mind. So the pandemic, of course, was horrific and tragic on so many levels. But if there's one good thing that it brought us, and there's more than one in my opinion, it is that many companies discovered that they don't need people on site to get great results from them. For many companies, this was the no-go. I've experienced it so many times. And even big, progressive, modern companies were still reluctant. After being forced into a remote model, they realized that actually the productivity went up.
It's much better, right?
It is much higher. And there are so many companies who are now offering the hybrid model, where they offer employees to choose what works for them best. And the majority of employees will be in the hybrid, meaning you can be in the office, but you don't have to, and you have all the freedom to decide what day you want to take to come to your office.
I think it's not like a totally positive. We have to think about the threats of remote and everything. So we have to learn as an organization how to do meetings, how to do it in different time zones, and so on. So it's not so like black and white, but as Petra said, the productivity is much better and people feel much better in the company. That's the result, actually.
Well, one of my favorite jokes says that who's the chief innovation officer in all companies? And the answer is COVID. And it's never the CDO. And like during so many years I have heard companies like, oh, we can't implement Google Meets, oh, we can't implement Slack, and then suddenly within like 2 weeks everybody was on that.
Maybe 2 days.
Yeah.
Okay.
Coming back to the mental health, I think you both addressed it during your talks, and it's about it's a taboo, especially we are in Central Eastern Europe. It's kind of like still a debate if to confess that you go to therapy, if to confess that your employees actually need it, and so on. How do you battle those stigma?
I think we talked about it today. The best is lead by example. If leaders and senior colleagues will express their feeling about the crisis, how they really feel inside, and what they are doing for it, people will follow because you will normalize it. People will think that it's something usual which we do, especially when you onboard people and they see that it's something normal in the culture of the company, they start to do it normally. So I think that's the easiest and the fastest thing. You have to have right leaders and you have to teach them how to express themselves authentically.
Mm-hmm. For me, maybe it's connected to also personal, because like it's not about like going into the therapy and recognizing it as a benefit for my company, but also talking to my friends about the fact that I go there. And I think we so often forget that the personal and work life, they kind of intersect, they influence each other. And you said it, like number one is relationships in Hedepy.
Because we live with everybody.
And by the way, this is how Lukáš mentioned employer branding earlier. This is, the word of mouth is the best branding campaign for an employer. So if two friends are chatting and one shares that they used or benefited from this service provided by the company, and the other one thinks, this would be really helpful for me, but my company is not providing it, then you already see the differentiation in how much employers care for their employees' health.
That's true. Like gossip in the kitchen is the best campaign that you can do, actually promoting that as a healthcare benefit. I see that we have Tomáš coming, so that's a great one. There's one question that arrived from the audience. While anonymity is great, what would you say to employees whose needs should be heard by the employees in case where their issues come from not being valued? So Lukáš, we talked a lot about the importance of anonymous therapy, but at the same time, maybe during the therapy, they talk about something that is really bad within the company. So how do we make this heard? How do we kind of connect this? Like on one side, the anonymity of the therapy session, and on the other side, something that should be heard by the HR.
I think it's really hard to do it, actually. But we called it mood tracking in the company. It's actually something pretty innovative in Central Europe, pretty standard in Western part of the world, because you can do really great survey and one-to-one with people every week or every month, every quarter to understand if something bad is inside the company. To take it from the relationship with psychotherapist is impossible. We can't approach this relationship, so we don't know what people talk about inside there. Mm-hmm. We can ask them only through survey, one-to-one, and really try to be empathetic.
Mm-hmm. One last question for each of you, and that's the key takeaway from you during today's session. What's one thing that we might have not have covered, but you think it should be mentioned during the discussion, or something that you would like to highlight from something that you have said before? Petra.
That's a tough one. Picking just one.
Two.
I would
We
Can
are
I have
friends,
two?
so you have to.
So one that should be the main takeaway is when implementing or wanting to implement well-being strategy, really build advocates for it within your company leadership. That's the key success factor. That's going to help you succeed with whatever you bring on board, including potential the therapy for this. So that's the one out of my presentation. One that we haven't mentioned, but actually the comment I see reminded me of it. That is going back to the demographics of your workforce and how it is important to look at the needs of your people holistically. It's really important for those professionals who are looking after the employees and building those strategies to consider that they are human beings too. And what always helped me in all of my roles was putting myself in the shoes of those that I'm looking after, and also consider myself as one of those who will be consuming the outcome of these efforts. Basically humanize. We're talking about strategies. That's all very technical, but we're talking about human beings here and addressing their needs. So have this in mind when building those strategies.
I love it because so often, for example, in marketing, we look at people as users, but we shouldn't forget they're people, and it's the same. Lukáši.
It's a really tough one, but I have 30 seconds to think about this. To summarize it, I just think that 59% of the whole population face some mental problem. It couldn't be a big thing. It could be relationship, stress, or burnout. That's a big thing. So your people, it doesn't need to be psychotherapy, but your people need to know that you take care of them. That's really important, and you have to somehow show them that it's really important to take care. So that's it, simply. Just take care of your people because they now need it. We have 2 years of crisis and they need you.
The World Health Organization actually estimates that we're losing $1 billion a year just because of the fact that we are not taking care of our people. And I think that's a horrible thing as a society.